everybody. I'm Nicole Stewart.
And it's Christina Torres.
And this is Reinforcing Conversations. We are shaping better behavior one talk at a time.
Yes, and this episode is made possible through the support from the New England Center for Children. For over 50 years, the New England Center for Children has been a worldwide leader in autism and education research. Through our schools, clinics, consulting services, and the ACE ABA software system, we're shaping a more inclusive future for all.
And hi, we have a special guest today. We are so excited you joined us. We are so excited to be joined today by Dr. Liza Geonie. Liza is a BCBA-D and researcher studying how behavior analytic principles apply to misinformation and online behavior. Her work explores why people share inaccurate information even when they know better, and how reinforcement, attention, and social approval shape what spreads online. She regularly writes, presents, and consults across disciplines, translating core behavioral principles to modern online environments, and is currently developing CEU trainings and resources to help professionals navigate digital behavior more intentionally. We're so excited to have you, Liza. Welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm a little under the weather, so I'm a little raspy, but it's that time of year.
Yeah, I hear you.
I'm a school consultant as well. So last week, a child literally sneezed like all over me. And I'm like, all right, here it comes. And so, yeah, here it is.
Yeah, we've all been there. I feel like the cough in the face where you're like, okay.
Oh, yeah. No, this was a full like rain of sneeze. So I was like, there's no avoiding this one.
Yeah, and for those of you guys listening and probably getting new in the field, this is a great way to model. I have one of our kiddos too that cough like that. We're like, oh.
I think this one took everybody by surprise. I don't think this kid saw the sneeze coming. I certainly didn't see the sneeze coming. This was definitely out of nowhere. But hey,
yep, it happens. It happens. It's one of the many risks we go into in this field.
Absolutely. So,
yeah,
but I'm here. I made it. So yeah.
Yes. Well, we're so excited to have you. I am so interested in your ABA journey. Like, how did you? I always want to know like how people. It's the same. I live in the town I grew up in, and so I'm always interested how people ended up in my town because it's like a small little town in New Jersey.
Right. Yes. Well, it's a long journey because I'm a Gen Xer, so I've been doing this since the 90s.
Wow.
It's funny because when I was even applying for my doctoral program and I had like a little interview on the phone, I told the guy that I was talking to, who was also a BCBA, that I've been a BCBA since 2007. He went, wow. Your BCBA number must start with a 1. And I was like, yeah, it does. So apparently, yes, I'm one of those dinosaurs whose BCBA number starts with a 1.
You only have 4 digits, right?
1 0. No. I'm not.
It's like a 107.
Yes, and then
and then 4 after. Yeah. So the BCBA number is a 1 is for BCBA, a 0 is BCABA.
Okay.
And then the next 2 are your year that you were certified. And then the next number is the number BCBA you are. So mine is 10.
Okay. So then maybe that's what he said, but it was something where I felt like, I'm like dinosaur. So, okay. You know, it's so funny. All these years, I feel like I should have known all that, but thank you.
It's learning something new every day, right?
Yeah. It took me a long time to figure that one out. I was like, why? I think it was maybe when my business partner got hers. And I was like, 20, that's weird. It's 2020, huh? Gotcha. And then I was like, wait a minute, mine is 12.
So there you go. Yeah, so I'm 07.
Yeah.
So, but before that, so let me just to put some context. I started so what happened was I was in actually a writing major in undergrad. I grew up in New York City. I'm a city girl. I live on Long Island, so I didn't get too far, although I did live in Vermont for a little bit in between. I did kind of move around a little bit, but I grew up in New York City. I moved to Long Island. I went to Hunter College. I had a degree in creative writing, poetry.
Amazing.
I do spoken word poetry. I haven't done it in a while. And I was shelving books in Barnes & Noble because I could not, nobody's paying you to be a writer, right? Or be a poet. Right. And I was working there full time. And there was a woman who was working there part time. And I just mentioned I asked her, like, what do you do otherwise when you're not here? And she goes, oh, I work. There was a school in the town where this Barnes& Noble was that was a school for kids with special needs. And she worked in this ABA program. And I never heard of such a thing. And she said, I work with, kids with autism. And she's like, if you're ever looking for a job, they're always looking for people.
Yes.
And I was like, you know what? I don't want to shelf books anymore. So let me see what this is about. And that's how it started. Started in the program. I didn't like it. I didn't have obviously a lot of training. Sometimes they really just throw people in. I hate to say that's not very good.
Yes.
It's
true though. That's your lived experience.
Yes. And so but it was brand new. So this was when Let Me Hear Your Voice and all of those types of ABA kind of information was coming out. So they were very big on the 40-hour a week ABA program for kids as young as possible. So they put me in this program shortly after I started, where we did get a lot of training, we got a lot of support, we got a lot of guidance. And I remember my supervisor asked me, so what do you think, Liza? Do you like this? And I go, no, I don't know if this is for me. She goes, well, don't quit because you're really good at it. Keep going, keep doing this. She's like, you don't realize like what you're doing yet, but you're really good. You get it. You understand it. And I think all I needed was this little like push of, you get this, you're good at this. The kids love you. You love the kids. And then I was making $6 an hour because this was, again, this was the 90s. So,
Yeah.
the minimum wage was definitely lower. I remember I would pass every day a Wendy's that would say, now hiring $6.25 an hour. And I'm like, which way do I turn? Do I turn to the wind or do I keep going to work? And I did. I saw the value in what I was doing. I started saving my own money and going to conferences and trainings. It was a very different world. There wasn't as much online. There weren't I would join these email digest groups. There were no chat groups, and there was no Facebook, and there was no
social media how it is today. Yeah.
I started reaching out. I was part of email chat serves or listservs, and I was talking to Brian Awada through a chat, an email. There were people on there. So, and I had no idea who I was emailing. I'm like, I love what you're saying. You're so, wow, you really know this field. And he was so humble and wonderful. We would share emails together. And I just started to get really interested in the field and start connecting with people. Big people in the field. I saved money and I actually saw Lovas speak, at a conference. And when I tell you, I feel like this is a very different, time. There was still pushback against ABA. There always was pushback against ABA. There was still people who believed in the vaccine connection. So there was still that in the world. But I was really excited about learning. And then I decided I wanted to get my master's. I actually went for general. My grandmother was teacher. She pushed me into general education. She was like, you'd be so good. You love kid, blah, blah, blah. So I actually I went the very long way because I got my master's in gen ed. Literally had the certificate in my hand. I was already now in ABA for 2 years. And I'm like, I want to go back for special ed. So I did. I went
oh my gosh,
very long way. I went back for special ed. And at the time, there was a lot of buzz about this BCBA certification, but you had to go to Florida to take the test. And
oh my gosh,
no, how long ago?
Because there was the CBA.
Yes.
Yeah. And so the BCBA was it was formed in the BACB was formed in 1998. So it was only available in Florida.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And I had one of my mentors at work got her BCBA. So she was talking a lot about it. There were you could take these practice tests to see if it's something you're interested in. I remember I had to go all the way to Troy, New York. I was living on Long Island. So all the way upstate New York. I had a friend that lived upstate. I stayed with her and I took this mock test. And I'm like, oh God, this is so hard. I don't know if I would ever be able to do. So I kind of was after taking that, I'm like, this is going to be too hard for me. I don't think this is the direction I'm going to go in.
Oh, no.
But it did. Obviously it did. I started taking more coursework, and then the BCBA started becoming something more accessible where you could take the test. Obviously
4 times a year.
Not just in Florida.
Right. So I wound up taking the coursework for that. The program that I took was specifically designed to satisfy the coursework. I was at this point working somewhere where I had a BCBA supervisor, so I was getting my supervision. Everything, like the stars were just lining up for me perfectly. Where I was able to do this. I remember was I'm divorced now, but at the time I was dating the man that I was going to marry. And I was, I think I wound up getting, I remember thinking this is the worst time for me to get pregnant. So of course I got pregnant and I only have one child. And I
Okay.
remember like studying. And I took my test at a testing center 3 weeks before I gave birth. I was
Oh my
like 9
gosh.
months pregnant. And you
Oh
had to
my
do like a
gosh.
thumbprint to like get in and out. So I'm like, I didn't go to the bathroom because I wanted it. I took the full 4 hours to take the test.
Yeah.
And at that time, you didn't even find out if you passed.
Right. Same. I was the same. Mine was, I did in 2012. It was the same. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's just recently where people found out that you passed.
Yeah. I think it started when I took it, the fourth, because I was right after, because before COVID, it was out 4 times a year. And then after COVID, they opened it up to freely whenever there's an availability. And if you fail, you get 2 pieces of paper. And if you pass, you get one.
So you got your one piece and you knew.
Failed
Yeah.
my exam my first time. I'm a proud failure. So I like to
Okay.
represent.
Oh,
I have supervised people who were brilliant. I mean, like,
same.
I was like, and they failed like 4 times. Sometimes this test taking. I happened to pass my first time, but I was really like, I'm like, I can't study like this again with a newborn. So I've got to make this happen.
Yeah. There's a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah, and somehow I really didn't think I passed, but the funny thing is, I remember, I took the test, everybody's like, "Are you excited?" And I wasn't finding out what I was having either, so everyone's like, "You excited about your baby?" And I'm like, "I'm excited about finding out if I pass the exam. I already know I'm
Mm-hmm.
having a baby."
Right.
So,
Right.
and I found out, I remember he was a newborn, and I would take him to the mailbox and check, and then one day I got it, and I was like, "Look, mommy passed."
He was the
So
first person you.
he was the first person. Yeah, he was like a little like sack of potatoes. He was like,
Yeah.
but yeah. So that was that. And then of course I followed the path that most people follow when they have their BCBA, which I was already doing. I was already consulting in schools, working in the field of
Sure.
autism. I always knew I wanted to get my doctorate, but there was no behavior analysis doctorate. I didn't want to do psychology. I didn't want to do education. I wanted to stick with behavior analysis. So
Mm-hmm.
finally, fast forward, applied and got accepted in, I want to say like February of 2020. So you could see where this is going, right? So they're like, you're going to start in so it'd be May of 2020. So at that time, there was a little buzz about something going on in China, but like,
Yeah.
nothing that was affecting us, and then it affected us, so now I was starting my coursework, and luckily everything was online to begin with, but I was starting my coursework in May of 2020. The world was just a dumpster fire of just the pandemic. But I was real, and I didn't know what I wanted to study, because they were like, "What do you want to? Do you think you know what you're going to want to do for your dissertation?" I had plenty of time, so I told them I'm not sure. They're like, "That's okay." Sometimes people don't figure it out until they start their coursework. They might have an idea of what they want to do. It's sort of like a major, right? You come in
Mm-hmm.
thinking you know what you want, and then you stick with it or you might change your mind depending on what you're studying. And what I started to, right from the start of the beginning of my coursework, I started really focusing on the information that was being shared all throughout social media
Mm-hmm.
on the pandemic, on everything related to COVID, starting from where it started, how it started, whether it's a hoax, how to treat it, wearing all the things. Do I wear a mask, not wear a mask? Is this a hoax? Is this made up from, is this coming from China? Is this a political ruse?
Yeah.
So I mean, inundated with all of this like information.
Yeah.
And people were like, I heard this. Oh no, I heard I heard that's not true. So there was all of these kinds of discussions. And so I started becoming very interested in people's information, not just information sharing, but how people seek out information, pursue information, process information. and then how they share it and stand by it when they post on social media. And I was thinking, this is all behavior. This is all observable and
Mm-hmm.
measurable. What's hard is the verbal behavior component, like the covert behavior part of it. But this is something that was fascinating to me. And they said right from the start in my program, you know, by the time you get to your dissertation, it's got to be something you love because you're going to hate it by the time you're done with it. So, like, make sure you love it. And I gotta say, like, so that stuck with me. And I wound up not only loving it, but loving it all through my dissertation and being more passionate about it after I was done.
Wow. It's like
So,
really your calling.
yes, it is. I feel this is a very important, socially valid behavior that behavior analysts should really focus on and look at. We do have a lot of discussion about misinformation regarding the field itself out there.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Literature on that. There's obviously misinformation on autism and vaccines, but I'm talking more globally, just how information gets looked at and shared through the platforms that we use on a regular basis is something that we really need to look more into because there's reasons why it's so prevalent and insidious
Yeah.
in our field and in our lot, not just in our field, but in our general everyday lives. So that's where I started to focus.
Wow. I'm so excited because I do a lot of dissemination online. And
Yes.
there's so many more BCBAs that are starting their own platform to educate and empower our communities, but also, right? It's like there's so many people that have no idea about ABA. And it's like, oh my gosh, what is this? Like, come on in, learn about the science of human behavior, right? So when you were mentioning your dissertation, right? And I love that you mentioned like it's all verbal behavior. I was literally explaining this. I'm like, you see how you guys are asking me questions? You're demanding for information. And then I'm introverbal filling in the blanks. Oh,
Absolutely.
you guys are tapping? That means you're reinforced by my live. So if you engage in this, I'm going to keep engaging this behavior. So, and people are like, oh my gosh, this is so relatable. So, can you share how you were able, like, what were some of those measurable outcomes that you were looking when it comes to the social media aspect?
So what we did was we so the research and the literature that I was looking at, because there's not much obviously out there in anything that's really behavior. It's more in like I have tons and tons of articles that come from like psychology and political behavior
Mm-hmm.
and also like computer like behavior in computers. There's different things out there, but nothing really behavior analytics. So we using the literature that's out there I did there were two intervention phases. So one was based on this. So Gleb Tsipursky wrote a lot on having people sign a pro-truth pledge. And these are people really like who are public facing who would sign this pledge, like politicians and people who like posted, mostly politicians who would take a pledge that they would only share sources of information or news sources that they have verified as and they would actually literally sign a pledge that I vow to share only verifiable sources and if they make a mistake and share something that was not verified or they mistakenly shared like some kind of misinformation, they would go public and say, oops, my bad, I shared this information and it turns out that it was not fully true or verified.
There's no gaslighting. There's like, we're actually going to be
Yes.
transparent and honest about it.
Yes.
Yep.
And
I love
so
that.
there was the pledging piece. So we needed something else as well. So we also did I did a like a 5 module direct instruction
Mm.
piece. So like direct instruction, there's a lot to direct instruction where you really have to do things in person. This was all through videos online. So it was using some of the like strategies from direct instruction. So they had to take modules on so like I'm teaching them about like one module is about satire. So just knowing the difference between satire, so you're not sharing like an onion article and being like, I can't believe this crazy thing, or but also there is bias, like looking at biased language and recognizing
Mm.
biased language. There was on it. The funny thing is that so much has changed with AI already, but there was on AI and recognizing
Mm-hmm.
things that might be from AI or generated from AI. Um,
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think what my other, like just more biased language, looking at, and then also using a four-step strategy developed by this man, Michael Caulfield, who's like an information researcher, called SIFT. The acronym is SIFT, and it's stop. So like just stop before you post something,
Mm-hmm.
investigate the source, find better material, find better sources, and trace to the original. So a lot of the time we'll see like something taken out of context, like so and so said this, but if you watch the whole speech, you see how much things have been taken out of context. So
Yeah.
I did a lot of training on that SIFT, how to use those SIFT strategies. So my study, when people signed on, I only had 3 participants, but when people signed on for the study, I told them all of the, what would go into it. So they signed on, they got briefed on the study. Once they signed and agreed to participate in the study, I started like a anonymous Facebook account with my research assistant. So we both had anonymous Facebook accounts. They would have to friend us. No pictures, we didn't interact, we didn't engage. We were just sort of like a fly
Wow.
on the wall. And then
Yeah.
we would look just to look for reactivity. We looked at how they posted prior to signing on to the study. So they knew we were already on board. So the criteria was that they had to already share news on their Facebook. So these are people who regularly shared news stories on their Facebook accounts. So just to check for reactivity, we looked at their previous posts and measured them using a checklist. Sarah Blakely is a librarian who has written on verifying resources online for college students. And she
Mm-hmm.
created this acronym called CRAP, and it's supposed to be easy to remember. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
For sift crap. Sift crap.
CRAP.
I got it.
Yeah, CRAP. Those are the 2 acronyms. So, CRAP.
Yeah.
So,
It's
CRAP
perfect for
is it?
misinformation.
Yeah. So, CRAP stood for is it current? Is it relevant? Who are the authorities on whatever the source is? Material. So, we would look at things like, is it current? Are you saying, look at this, look what's happening out there, but it was from 2015. So that would go down in points. Who were the
Okay.
people that were interviewed? Were there people interviewed? Were there, so there was sort of like, there was like a whole bunch of things that like had points to it. So if somebody was interviewed, it's 2 points. If it's current within the last year, it was as many points. So if it was 80% or higher, it was considered like a valid source of information. And then I also had an IOA who was also measuring. So we looked at that. And then we looked at after they signed the pledge, 2 weeks later, we looked at 2 weeks worth of posts to see if that changed their behavior at all. If they had higher percentages of valid sources or if nothing changed. And then they took a week to take my modules. And then I think we looked at like 3 weeks of posts and then we did like a follow-up. And so what we discovered is like most behavior changed, like habit, things would change a little bit in the beginning and then they would kind of go back to baseline, even though people were, yeah, like even though people were aware of
Yeah.
being, like having a little more information. They knew they were being monitored and watched. They would change their behavior a little bit, but things might have been a little bit higher for one participant, but mostly people did kind of default back to their baseline behavior of how they post. One woman who was a participant started posting with, not sure if this is true, but and then she would
Mhm.
share. So she was aware of the possibilities that and I think that told me she didn't really do her sift, she didn't really stop and look. So, but she's like putting it out there as this might not
Like a
be
little
fully
disclaimer.
true. So
Yeah.
you might want to check into this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's so interesting because it sounds like so Christina's whole vibe is low effort, high reinforcement, and it sounds like maybe it was too effortful and then you don't get reinforced enough.
You
So there's
nailed
not enough of that positive feedback to
nailed it.
engage in the alternative behavior.
Absolutely.
Which is like, oh my God, super jargony. So we try to like break everything down because our goal is to have an audience that's not just ABA people, but people who are maybe ABA curious or families or
Yeah.
who want to see, maybe are in ABA, but want to see other things that we can do
Mm-hmm.
or interested in ABA. But that was super jargony of me. But basically like, it was too hard for people
Yes,
to engage in the sift behavior.
exactly. So, and that's actually
Yeah.
why you kind of got my whole discussion part of my dissertation was all about response effort.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and it's
I'm
jargony.
joining the team.
Yeah, it's jargony, but I think anybody recognizes terms like effort. Like people like
Yeah.
I think that's a like it's not like we're talking about like intermittent schedules of reinforcement or like
True.
that's very we're very it's all about the response effort, which I think was a big part of it because if you think about how social media was created, right? Social media was originally created for what? To be social, right? To engage socially. Like the very like again, I remember when Facebook first I don't know how if you guys were in the MySpace world,
I
but
never was on MySpace. I was at college in Boston when Facebook was invented at Harvard. So
okay.
I knew I had friends at Harvard. I had a friend at UVA. So I remember when Facebook said which universities it participated with. Like you
Yes,
had to
yes.
have an email from that university. And I remember when my university got it, we were all like, ah. But all you could do was like poke each other. There was
Right.
like not very much you could do.
Exactly. So I was talking about this with another podcast too.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I was on MySpace. I had
Okay.
friends. I just had friends on my, like we weren't doing anything. We were just like keeping in touch with each other. It was easier
Yeah.
than because back then you had to pay for text, so nobody was texting each other.
Yeah.
True.
Nobody was like email was getting very cumbersome. So what a great way for all of like my small group of friends. I wasn't like friends with strangers. These were all the people in my life were like, cool. I was pregnant. So this was a good way of showing people, hey, look, I'm pregnant. Look,
Mm-hmm.
this is how big I'm getting, those kinds of things. And that was about it. So then at the time when I was married, I did have two stepdaughters. And one of them was
Mm-hmm.
telling me, oh, there's this new like way, like college kids are keeping in touch with each other, this Facebook, so it was very similar. So we saw like the birth of Facebook. So again, all of my friends from MySpace were like, oh, all right, well, let's start to like, like let's just make our pilgrimage over to this other one now that we're able to do it. And it just was another way of keeping in touch. And again, like we would poke each other. We would play like vampire and werewolf games. There were like all these like weird games. We were doing like,
Yeah.
Farmville and like just all these like I need a friend to give me like a goat, like that was basically our or doing Candy Crush, not Candy Crush, Jules, something with Jules.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
Yeah.
we were and that's what social media kind of started at, like really even when it started off, it's so that people at Harvard can like get to know each other and like get to know their roommate before they live together, stuff like that. And then you know I think Zuckerberg saw, wow, like I've got sort of what Google was just another website where you can search for things until they realized all of these searches are data that we could start using to sell people stuff that they're searching, spending time on. And so I think Zuckerberg also got in on that. Like, hey, listen, this is a lot. A lot of people are getting together and talking about things that they like to do and care
Mm-hmm.
about. How can we use this to sell to them, right? And then really sell them to
To
other
companies.
companies, right? So this
Yeah.
then became so then it started to turn into more of like that, model. And then we started getting news and information. So people when they scroll on social media, they're very passive, right? They're not in this let me, keep my wits about me and scrutinize the information that's coming in, right? They're like, "Oh, Liza's son graduated from high school. How sweet. Oh, look at that cute dog. Oh, you know, so and so had a baby, blah blah blah." What? What is going on in Minneapolis right now? This is unbelievable. Share. It's like a very like, you're just like that dog, like that cat. Oh, angry react this situation. So you're like in bed, you're on your lunch break, you're in the car before session, right? And you're scrolling, you're scrolling, you're scrolling, you're scrolling, scrolling. It's very passive. And you're not thinking, wait, did this happen? How did this happen? Is this fully accurate? You're like reacting. And now once you click anything, you clicked an angry react, you're adding to the algorithm, right? You're getting more information now because there was a study that came out years ago, and Facebook said that they've changed this. I don't think they changed this. That when people would angry react, it got like more of a boost like to their
Mm.
algorithm. And I think there was even more monetization of websites that were providing this information to
Mm-hmm.
more of those, higher intensity reactions like anger and sadness. So if you look at your feeds, we do get a lot. I mean, it's hard not to get horrible news right now in our feeds to begin with, but we do tend to get more negative news stories because it gets more of an emotional response from people. And
Mm-hmm.
there's research that backs that up. There are people that have come out that have worked in social media like platforms that said, oh, yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I've left Facebook or I've left Twitter, or I've left here because I want to talk to people about the dangers of how things are being spread on those platforms. And so, again, I use those platforms every day. Everybody's going to use those platforms, but we have to be mindful about how we react to that information, literally, how we click and react to that information,
Mm-hmm.
and then also how we share it and how we engage with it, because it's adding, you think you're going to make a difference by arguing with some stranger on the internet, but you're really just adding to the algorithm, and you're adding to the whole, kind of universe that's out there when it comes to social media.
Mm-hmm.
So, really quick, because when it comes to social media, there's a lot of components, like you said, right? And because people's attention is so short, you have like the first 3 seconds to really snag someone's attention before they're kind of scrolling. So,
Yes.
a lot of people embed prompts, and they, especially in the ABA space, like everyone kind of likes to talk down about ABA or compare something to ABA to get that trigger response for many. So, what is your take in regards to social media and how others should kind of be mindful of possibly spreading misawareness, right? Because one of the strategies too is that one discipline will say something completely crazy to get a huge response, to get the comments going, and then a lot of people are resharing and kind of like promoting the misinformation to try to correct the misinformation that's going out there.
Yeah. So, and it's so funny. It's like this is so perfect because you brought up the response piece, and now you brought up white. Yeah, this is so what
I love it.
a long time ago, Herbert Simon is a researcher who talked about attention economy and how we are, and he said this way before. This was like in I want to say the 60s or the 70s, before there was a lot of other things that were out there trying to get our attention, but we are limited as humans in what we can
Mm-hmm.
attend to, right? So we talk about even like if people think that they could multitask, and there's research that's saying like, no, you're not really multitasking. You're just doing a bunch of things terribly at the same time.
Yes.
And you're doing more, but you're really not. You're giving, you only have so much ability and attention. So now attention economy is being applied by researchers to obviously social media and just our phones in general. Our phones are, I literally today ordered a brick for me and my boyfriend, which is supposed to, you could tap it and it's supposed to limit how much you're, getting notifications or even access to certain things. I'll let you guys know how that goes. But
I use an app called Roots on my phone. So like when I'm putting my kids to bed, I can't no text messages come through. I cannot, if I want to unblock it, I have to meditate for 5 minutes.
I like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's the thing. So you are coming up, you look seeking out tools, right, to put your attention to things that are important and matter. The social media platforms, right, the big wigs and all the big tech, they know that they are um they are vying for our resources. Our attention is a resource because when they have our attention, right, we are purchasing things, right, we're
Yeah,
scrolling,
our behavior.
come across ads. I do it all the time. I'm like, you know what? Great. I needed this because I searched it. It's a little weird that they were able to figure out exactly what I was looking for, but hey, this actually saved me some time. And I'm going to click and get my little code to get my, little discount. But yes, there is an attention economy that social media runs on, and platforms are competing for time, for clicks, reactions, They are not competing for accuracy. Accuracy is actually something that they're not banking on. They don't care if anything that they put out there is accurate in terms of news, or the things that we buy, like advertisements, are never telling us the truth. So anything that captures attention quickly has an advantage regardless of whether it's true. We're engaged. That's why, again, when I talk about all the time, when we first were on Facebook, we got to an end of our page. We would scroll, even when
Yeah.
the feeds, right? They would go, no more, like, all done
That's
here.
it for today. It would say like, that's it for today.
Now
Yeah.
there's an infinite scroll in all the
Yes.
platforms, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, anything. There's no end. And that's by design. That's to keep us engaged with content. So there's no natural stopping points, right? Like, so you create your natural stopping point by tapping on your roots. And then before you can access, you have to like turn on a meditation, thing, a prompt to get back in. So that's not existing on social media. So it's, these are things that we need to, and it's a habit like anything else. I was reading, there's a lot of talk about social media being an addiction. And there is a researcher, his name is Ian Anderson. He said that if you look him up, that social media is not an addiction. And he's almost like saying, let's take away this, kind of this, we're out of control because we're addicted to social media. He goes, it's a habit. It's a bad habit, just like anything else is a bad habit. And if you start to see it more as a bad habit as opposed to an addiction, we could take better control over what we're doing with our time on social media. And I really like that, because I think once we start getting into like, I've done research on like substance addictions, like internet addiction, porn addiction. I've done research on those. Some people might think it's an addiction, but I like to think of it as a habit. So if we start seeing social media or any engagement on the internet as just habits, we could then intervene, right? There's a lot of research in behavior analysis on habit formation, on like stopping routines so that we engage in other routines.
Harm
So
reduction.
I like that. So I think if you can start to look at like, I'm going to go on to be mindful, I'm going to go onto Facebook, but I'm going to get out of the habit of arguing with people online. I'm trying to work on that one. I'm bad. I will engage with strangers online if I see misinformation, right? But I'm not changing anybody's minds. And then I start getting more in my algorithm from these like Facebook accounts that I've never even seen or heard of before, because they're talking about the same topic. So I'm like,
Right.
I got to get out of this habit. So getting out of the habit of engaging with people, or I'm starting to try to add more to my feed that aren't news related, that are maybe like, I love seeing dancing, and I love like dog posts. So I'm trying to like more of those. So maybe I get more of that in my algorithm, just to change what's coming in and how I consume social media. Try to make my news, like looking for news on actual news sites and not using Facebook to get my news.
Yeah.
So these are little mindful
That's
things
great
that I'm
advice.
trying to do. And also I'm trying to, like, my New Year's resolution is to read more offline. So I'm not even using my iPad to read, but getting actual books again, holding a book and reading, and turning my phone on do not disturb, so that I'm actually reading. Or if I'm looking at journals, which are all online, putting everything on do not disturb. So I'm not getting any notifications of so and so liked your post, or so, those types of things.
Right.
So just to start, I mean, I'm talking on a deeper level of how we engage with information, but I think also just how we engage with social media in general. We need to take baby steps in a direction where we're just looking at social media for what it is. It's kind of a passive, time-consuming habit that we've got ourselves involved in.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, as a parent, so my 11-year-old is so interesting, because he really, like, he'll be like, you're on Instagram, mom, get off Instagram. And it like really, I have been reading a lot of research on how like screen, and I've been working on this as a parent, screen issues in a household often also stem from the parents' use of screens.
Absolutely. Yes.
And how like I'm in here having a conversation with my friend while like you're over here playing, and instead of me connecting with you while you're playing, I'm stuck over here and missing bids for attention or things to comment on, or even like sometimes like now what I try to do is I keep like a book on different levels of, I might read a book upstairs and I have a downstairs book.
Yep.
So that like if I have nothing to do, instead of going on my phone, I made the response effort lower. So instead of going on my phone, I'll pick up the book. So like if my kids are playing on their own or doing their own thing,
yes,
I'm not defaulting to the screen where I like kind of get lost in it. And my 11-year-old is really, he's really like, I see you on Instagram, I see you on Facebook. Like he controls I don't know my screen time password. So if like Instagram times out, he has the password.
well, that's great. Yeah,
I don't know the password, so I can't get back into it. But it like really, it really, I think
sorry, good.
He's really against social media because he like really sees how I could fall into it, or how like people get stuck on it. And I know you said like not addicted. I think that it's like maybe a spectrum where like there's some people where it's a bad habit, and then there's other people who have the capacity for becoming addicted to it. And I think like we try to be mindful of like where we're putting our time so that it doesn't become something that like I need to have, if that makes sense.
Well, like with addiction, I think I really liked when he talked about the habit aspect of it. But I do think, if anything interferes with your life so much that you are not engaging with the world,
Mhm.
that is an addiction. That was,
Right.
I remember when I was doing a paper on porn addiction for my doctoral program. And I found that interesting, just the concept of
Yeah.
it. And I remember reading something where they're like, it's not the porn itself. It could be golf addiction, right? If it's taking away from your time and your work and your family and like accessing the real world because you're engaging in this other thing. So yes, and it is an addiction. So yeah, absolutely. There is a potential always. But I think he was talking about like, let's not like, let's
Not
kind of,
everyone's an addict.
not
Yeah.
everyone's an addict, and not everyone, we're not powerless. And that's what I really liked about that, is that we're not
Mhm.
powerless. I find it very interesting, and I would love to just see, it's interesting to see the direction that our kids are going in with it, because my son is 18.
Mhm.
He had Instagram. I let him have Instagram when he was young. But he's very like, he sees also social media as not like a here all end all kind of thing. He's very engaged with the real world.
That's
He's
great.
he's not like he likes to watch his TikTok videos. He likes to watch his YouTube videos, but he's really not interacting with people. He doesn't see it as a like tool to be social. He's social, like as a human. He goes out, he calls his friends, he goes out, he does things, and he's always been like that as a teenager. To the point where I remember we went to go see a concert together. We go to see a lot of concerts together.
Aw.
So we went to a concert together, and he yelled at me because before the show started, I was the one on my phone and scrolling. And he was like, "Mom," he was like,
It's like
I
my
think, like,
son.
Moment.
yeah, he was like,
Yeah. My son's
"We're
like, why
here."
you gotta be on your phone?
Yeah. He's like, "We're here to spend time together. Why are you on?" And I'm like, you're right. I just disengaged. And I, again, I always am open to like feedback like that, which is great. So I felt really bad. And then I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I put it away. And we enjoyed our time together. So I think this might go in a good direction overall with our kids who have seen now adults so engaged and seeing, oh, I want this time with mom. And there's her face in a screen,
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
hoping that changes that part of it. My concern, though, is the bigger piece of the internet's not going away, and
Mhm.
how people share information at lightning speed is not going away. We might lose maybe the scrolling social aspect of it, maybe, but the how people connect and share on, this is what I heard, or this is what's going on in the world, that's not going away.
Rumors fly faster. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Christina.
Yeah, I have a question. So, for someone who obviously did so much research and studied, like dove deep into the misinformation, what are like your top three icks when you see someone post something that's misinformed, like misinformation?
That's a good. I like the X. So if people go look at this news story that came out. And the website itself, it's not even from a news site, it's from a website. So I'm trying so hard not to be political. It's hard not to be because I think this is all very political. But let's say somebody's posting, look at this story I heard about how awful cats are, right? Cats are just the worst pets to ever have. And the website is like dogsarethe.best.com, like so there's that. And I'm like, oh, do you have any other sources of information from that? And then people get angry. They're like, no, I've done my research. I've looked at dogsareawesome.com. Look at this YouTube video. And it's like dogs are the best, .com. And look, there's a professional that I even got interviewed, and it's like somebody
A dog.
Right. The dog, I was told my boyfriend, because I've been letting our dog sleep in bed with us. And I said, there's research that says that letting dogs sleep with you is good for your serotonin and you this and that. And he went, who wrote the article? Dr. Doggy McBark Bark Bark. But exactly, right. So obviously somebody who is saying, look at this source, and it's very clearly skewed a certain direction, right? So that's one ick. There's the other ick of somebody being only sharing from that one source, and then not being, if somebody comments, oh, I heard this, even not even in a confrontational, but oh, that's interesting because I heard that this isn't happening anymore, this isn't true. And then people are arguing that their original post, because people get very connected. Other things that I haven't even talked about, like confirmation bias, which is people are seeking out information that only supports their own specific worldview. So there's that. There's really, it's just the sources. When people are sharing information from sources that aren't even news sources, they are just websites that are a little sketchy. That's one.
Right.
Anything where the language is very biased in the headline. So, look what this malicious cat did today, like in the headline, malicious, insane cat.
The adjectives and how they describe, right? It's like objective.
Scratches this poor, helpless human today. Like there's a very all right. So I could say before I even read the article, I could see the headline, how it's going to skew. There were these researchers, and again, I don't remember the names, but they said a big, what feeds a lot of misinformation is there's actually an acronym for it. It's like SWOC. It's sharing without clicks. So SWOC. So people will share a news article based on the headline, but they never clicked to read the article.
Yeah.
Right. Which is how you get clickbait, where you're like, this, I get a lot of clickbait on colon cancer for some reason, where it'll be like, this person, it'll say something like, a 43-year-old has rare symptom of, and it's like bleeding. And I'm like, that's not a rare symptom,
Right. Yes.
Or like
local woman in your area, beat menopause with turmeric. Yeah. Like that.
Yeah. I'm sure I'll get that one soon.
Yes. Oh, I did do a module on clickbait as well.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, I get those. I read all the colon cancer ones because I'm always like, oh my God, what is it? We have a history of colon issues in my family,
well, there you go. So, and then you engage with it, right?
And because I'm like, what is it? What if I have that symptom?
Right. And that's it. So that's reaching for engagement. And then you fed the algorithm machine, which again is like, that's what it's there for. That's what, it's did its job. You did your job. It's, that's how these things work on with social media and the internet. So I'm trying to think if I really get into I think it's biased websites, biased headlines are another ick. And then memes. So just like memes that are based on nothing. So it's funny. I actually, and this is a low stakes meme, but I shared a meme a couple years ago, right around the Ukraine, like there was a lot going on in the Ukrainian war. And there was this old man standing outside like a burnt house with a kitten. And it was like, this old man lost everything, but he rescued his kitten during the
Mm-hmm.
Russian Ukraine like attacks. And so somebody called me out. They go, no, 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 that's not true. And I'm like, I can't believe that I just saw this sad, sweet, like, picture, and like my bleeding heart just went, and like I lost all control of my faculties. And I
Wow.
clicked that share,
Yeah.
and I looked into it, and I used it as an example in my modules too because of it. But it was like it was somewhere else, it was some other country, and the man like left his stove on and like burnt his house down, but he managed to save his kitten. So it was not related to war, but those things start to come out. Like there's a lot of memes that are created that are out of context or have nothing to do with the actual story, but they'll use something that will trigger an emotional response. So if I
Mm-hmm.
see like a meme with like the yellow writing, just sort of, like just sort of that, like there's no context, there's no link to any source. It's just like, look what this person did here. That's like an automatic ick also. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
just
What Those are all great ones. Now, what is your take with, obviously we're in a really niche space and not many people understand the day to day, what we go through, all the different things, the contingencies that we're exposed to, right? So, what is your take on the ABA memes that are meant to be like to kind of shed light on like they make something that obviously is not funny, but also it's like, oh, with different sound effects or like, oh, no, no, no. You know what I mean? What's your take with people that are trying to kind of shed light of working in the field by making memes that could come off wrong to those that are not in the field to understand that context?
it's funny because I was on LinkedIn and I saw somebody kind of like commenting on like a meme about like sort of like therapists getting maybe like dealing with aggression or something. And it was like, I think the meme was something like that face when like you get hit for the fifth time or whatever, something. And
Mm-hmm.
somebody used as an example of like, stop sharing these, stop spreading these because it makes it look like this is, I mean, again, I mean, we do deal, the fact is we do deal with aggression, we do deal with those things. But again, when you don't have any context and you have no knowledge about the field, seeing things like that shared does make the field look very unappetizing and like, why would anybody want to go into this?
Callous.
Yes. So, and also, you know, I think it's one thing if you share, like those memes amongst each other. Like, my friends and I, we have like chats, like just texts, like group texts where we'll like share like, oh my God, this was me with Joey yesterday. Things like that where we have the same context, the same, we really are in the same world together. We're working with the same people. It's one thing if you're sharing amongst each other, but when you're putting anything out there, right, on the internet, you have no control over how it's viewed, how it's conceptualized, how it's continued to be shared. So I think, we're trying to always, as BCBAs, and disseminating information about our field. We do, I think, ethically are accountable for how we are making the field look, so I think
Mm-hmm.
we do want to be careful about sharing anything that could be misunderstood or, just, looked at in a certain light. So I would be careful. I personally don't share anything about ABA on my general like Instagram, Facebook, unless it's like about data, about something like very like low stakes. I'm not sharing with people about like anything related to aggression, anything related
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be mocking the individuals that we work with.
Mhm.
Feel I don't see as much of that. I see more of, BCBA life, am I right? And it's like, kids screaming or crying or getting hurt. I've seen people, even like colleagues, who they're very good about not sharing any identifying factors, but like, I've seen, like on stories, like the therapist face and like a kid screaming in the background being like Mondays, and I
Yeah.
feel like, all right, like I get it. it's nice to see that other people are experiencing the same kind of stuff that I'm experiencing. But it does, it does kind of present the kids that we work with in a negative light. So I do
Mm-hmm.
try to keep that in mind and never, I personally don't share things like that. Even if I get injured, I don't really share. I feel like that all of that's really private and personal. And I feel like I don't want people to think that I'm going to work and work. Oh God, she's working with those people. She's working with those difficult. I get annoyed even when I tell people what I do for a living and they tell me, oh, you must have a lot of patience.
Oh my God, all the time. All the
Yeah.
time. And I'm
I'm like,
like, ask my
no,
children. I have no patience.
yeah, I have no patience. I need to see results immediately. I have no patience.
Yeah.
And I said I need more patience for the staff that I work with,
Mm-hmm.
than the kids. But like, so I feel like people already have these like preconceived notions about what we do. I don't want to feed that with every day is a drudgery, that we're getting beaten up and these kids are making us miserable. So I think, I try to stay away from any kind of memes like that. I do love a data meme. I don't know why. I do fall for those. Like I love just any kind of data memes. I just find them like, ooh, like I get that. I feel like
Yeah.
a little
Sure.
little inside joke. But yeah, no, I feel like, whatever we're sharing out there, I think it's like anything you share online, we lose control of it as soon as it goes out there into the ether.
Right.
So I think it's something that we need to be mindful about. um, I think that as behavior analysts, I think, not that we're always representing the field, but we are. We represent the field. Even like if our kids are playing soccer, I think like we're, just you go to Starbucks, you go anywhere, I think like we represent the field just by our own behavior and how we engage with the world and also how we interact with other people. So I think it's the same thing with social media. I think we do have a responsibility once you step foot in this field of how you engage and interact with anything. Like I um, see people in my field who, and again, I try not to judge because, again, sometimes it's low stakes. But if a behavior analyst is talking about like crystals and aromatherapy, I just take a pause. Again, you could believe in whatever you want. I love yoga. So, and I feel like there's healing properties to yoga. So, but I feel like, I'm very careful if somebody is a behavior analyst who's in the field who's now going to talk about something that's not supported by evidence and science.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that are BCBAs who are religious. And I think, whatever gets you through your day and matters to you, like I don't want to, I think that's all important and great stuff that makes us who we are. But I think when we start to push things onto other people, that's when I get like a little like on social media, I get a little careful.
Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
love that you mentioned that too, right? Because the BCBA, like earning your BCBA is, we have credentials, but your credentials doesn't dictate your personal life, right? You're entitled to have a personality outside of your credentials. You're entitled to have your own platforms, right? So you mentioning, oh, everyone is entitled to have their own religion, their own self-beliefs, right? So
Yeah.
it's like how, especially every platform is different. Like LinkedIn, you got to be careful. It's like, woof, because they'll
Yes.
come hard at you, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
here's this, and then it's like on social media, Instagram or TikTok, it's a lot laxed, and you could kind of have more. It feels a lot easier to share your personality on a platform like that because you're a person outside of your
Yes.
credentials.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And that's why I said I
Yes.
don't want to make it like, if you're a BCBA, you shouldn't be into crystals and aromatherapy. Like, you like, do the things that matter to you. But I think it's once you start to share things like, hey, listen, you don't need chemotherapy, you could just like burn sage, or like that's when I'm like, whoa, 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 where are we going with this? Like, didn't you,
Mm-hmm.
how could you be data driven and research based in one area and then push something that is so fundamentally not connected with anything research based in another area? That's what I get. Like, listen, if you want, again, it's your Facebook, do and say whatever you want. But I get a little, that's another ick, I guess, for me,
Yeah,
maybe just,
Yeah.
it's, I get like a little cautious about that.
Yeah. But it is interesting because I feel like our brains, it doesn't always make sense, but I feel like so many people are like that, where you can be like, I know people who maybe are in ABA, but perhaps vaccine deniers. And you're like, how can you, I'm a very scientific, I have a huge science background.
Yes.
I am evidence-based, I think, is like pretty consistent throughout my personality. Like, even if like one of my kids is sick or something comes up or there's like a new thing, I go to Google Scholar as
Yes,
opposed to the news or just doing a general Google search. Like, I
absolutely.
remember my pediatrician, when my oldest was 1, was like, honey is as effective as cough syrup. And I was like, honey? So then I went to Google Scholar and I read 3 articles, and honey is as effective as cough syrup. And I was like,
Really?
that's cool. I didn't go to the general internet. I was like, let me go see what research has been done on this.
And that's really important. And that's, again, that's taking that extra effort, right? To seek things out specifically. And that's a really important thing. Like also, like, just again, like in my everyday life, because I'm 52. So I'm very like, I look at nutrition. I look at like, I'm like very fitness oriented nutrition, but like as you get older, right? Like how you need the nutritional needs that you need, and like how you have to exercise, right? Because it's your metabolism, everything slows down, right? I'm doing the same thing. Like I'm looking for, because you look up anything on like perimenopause and like, so you get inundated, right? There's something that researchers call an infodemic. And
Yes.
it's literally an issue right now, is that there's so much information. There's so much information that now you have to pour through. And that makes it very overwhelming. And you obviously are going to become susceptible to, we know that when we search for anything too, people like, organizations pay for certain things to come to the top, right? So you have to really pour through. So when I'm looking for like, what are the best vitamins to take? What kind of food should I be focusing on? What kind of exercises? What kind of just like lifestyle choices? I have to really dig in, because again, I am evidence-based and I'm research-based. So I'm looking for things that are not just like, the first top 3 searches, right? The top. And then, of course, once I make that search, all of a sudden they are on my Facebook, they're on my Instagram, vitamins and, supplements and
Right.
different things that are now finding me. They're like, oh, hey.
And then you're like, oh, this is really interesting. I know. I started taking collagen
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
3 months ago, and I get so many ads now for hair loss.
Yes.
And I did a lot of research before I started taking collagen. And I was like, you know what? There's also a risk benefit analysis there where I'm looking at like, you know what? There's no harm. Like collagen really does nothing to you if it's not
Yes.
effective. So I was
Right.
like, I'll take it. I'll see. I actually have noticed, like, for me personally, it has like mixed results. For me personally, I am seeing like some hair regrowth. And in particular, my nails are really strong now.
Yeah, me too.
So I'm going to continue using it because
I'm a
it
big
is
collagen fan. So
Yeah.
I did a lot of, I'm a big, I feel it, my skin, everything is just great from collagen and
Yeah.
creatine. I put a scoop of creatine in my coffee. I've done research on that
Okay.
too. Stacey
Yeah.
Sims, to go in a different direction, but Stacey Sims is a PhD and she does a lot on, because she's an older woman now, but she's in incredible shape. She does everything that she says is like research-based and evidence-based on anything related to women getting older. So I've been a big fan of hers.
That's good to know.
Yeah, so just letting you know.
Yeah.
I did my research on that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it is. We're just, we're inundated and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So like
It's a lot of work.
looking for articles about honey, like you could have just been like, I saw that on my mom's group, so let me just jump in and do that.
Yeah. I think for me, breastfeeding and formula was a huge source of that info, that misinformation and the info sourcing. And like, that's kind of where I learned that experience. My first was not, he's a good eater. He's always been a good eater. And I had a health issue. So I had to go back to the hospital 3 days after he was born. And so I wasn't with him. So my milk didn't come in properly, but he was like a voracious eater. And so I didn't make enough milk for him. And it was a very stressful where you're like, and I'm sure a lot of women go through this, where I was like, I have to keep breastfeeding him? And you're seeing these like lactation websites that are like giving your child formula is the equivalent of giving them poison. And then you're seeing other things that are like, fed is best. You should not be worried about breast milk isn't that much better for you. And that was when I was like, you know what? I'm going to go on Google Scholar and learn. Like I had my mother being like, well, you were formula fed, and here are the 6 children I know who were breastfed, and this one has asthma, and this one has allergies, and this one has that. And I'm like, okay, but I don't, it's so much. I was so
Nicole,
overwhelmed.
look where you got that information about how formula is poison, right? From a
Yeah.
lactation website.
Yeah.
That is just sums up everything that we're talking about here. Is you can't go to something that's promoting heavily one-sided anything
Yes.
and get a full view of information on anything, right? So if you go on to like, you know, again, like I was kind of talking about dogs and cats, right? It's the same kind of thing. It's new before I even gave birth that I was not going to be able to breastfeed. So because I had a breast reduction, so I'll just
Okay.
you know, I'll be fully. I don't care. You could keep it in, keep it out, whatever. I don't care. But I knew from the
Yeah.
start. So
Yeah.
I was armed and ready for anybody to come at me with this, and I was formula fed. So, but I was ready. I was ready because I saw actually like again in 2007 is when I gave birth. It was very big into the attachment mothering, the wearing your babies, the breastfeeding, the you know
Or
like
the cry it out.
the cry it out. Yeah, like
Which is confusing because it's like let your baby cry it out,
Gerber
but
method.
also if you give them formula, you will poison them. And I'm like,
Right.
I don't.
Yeah, they called
I
it the
feel like
Gerber method. That was
yeah. I did it with my older son.
yeah. I was like, listen, I'm like, this is, you know, I had research I had, but at the end of the day, I'm like, you know, it's 2007. It's the 21st century
Yeah.
where, you know, like the formula's fine. It's fine. It's like, I shouldn't even have to argue this. Like, you know, so,
Yeah.
but the things you can't go to a lactation website to find out information about formula. You need
I
to
know.
get, again, sift, right? Stop, right? Because you're like, whatever emotion is driving you in whatever direction, find better information, find better sources, and investigate and trace to original. So you're looking at research, you're looking at different things. You can't go one place. So there was I know I'm kind of talking a lot, but it's a podcast, so I guess that's the whole point, right? There was a Stanford did a whole study on how people look for information, and what they do is they call it lateral reading. So when you open up a website, you open up, and it's so funny because if you looked at my right now my tabs, I have like a billion tabs open, but you
Mm-hmm.
read laterally. So if you're reading something, you open up a tab and look up like that researcher that said it. You open up a tab, you look at like maybe the source that they're talking about. So you open up a whole bunch of tabs. You're not reading a whole website from beginning to end, but you're looking laterally at more information about whatever is being said on that website. So let's say you're on that lactation website and like Dr. Smith said, you want to like click Dr. Smith, who is this person? On this study about like, you know, that she did in Omaha with like 5 babies, like Smith studied with Omaha, like,
Now
so
I'm
you're
going to read
clicking,
that study.
right. So you opening. And she, you know, she said that like, you know, Similac, you know, this disability in 20 babies, you're like Similac, blah, 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 whatever. So you opening up tabs. So you're not just reading that, but you're also looking all those sources up and then getting a better overall view. And then you're like, oh, wait, that Similac study was debunked. Or, you know, that was, you know, these babies had this issue, but their parents also had this like, you know, chromosomal thing go, you know, like whatever, just other things that might give you a better picture, because how something is written is very specific and cherry picked to prove a certain point, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to prove any point out there, you can go in. If I want to say that, like, you know, aliens are like running Starbucks, I bet I can find sources that will prove that point. So, you know, if I worked hard enough. And that's a funny thing is with response effort, people will sometimes work that hard to prove a point that is kind of wacky, you know, but so yeah, it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. It sure is.
I think too with the timelines, right? Because that's another thing. Like we're with social media, things are uploaded instantly, right? And then like pattern recognition, like, oh, I saw a story, and it's like, okay, keep scrolling, and then like next day I see 2 more stories on that, and then it's like, okay, maybe I should start reading the comments, seeing what people are saying, and then you kind of see a story kind of evolve.
Yes.
Just like remember with the BACB taking out the DEI, like remember that, and then like it was all of this, and then they explained why, and then it's like, oh. So it's like kind of waiting to get the context of all this information and then kind of going with it before you kind of not so much form an opinion, but like kind of share, right? It's like, okay, let's get all the information before you kind of like
And that's
engage.
the stop part and sift, because that's what happens is that people are not waiting for all the information. They're having an emotional reaction immediately, because that's what social media is developed for, is to immediately react to something that is presented to you, right? You click like immediately, you comment immediately. Everything is immediate.
Mm-hmm.
Waiting it out for a few days is not immediate. It takes, again, that's a habit that needs to
And
be developed.
self-control, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So there is something called illusory truth effect, and that's when you see the same story so often that you start to believe it, even if it has been debunked. I think that's a lot of like the vaccine stuff that is going on out there, but also the I'm trying to oops, my brain just went bloop. But so illusory truth effect though is a big one. There was something else I was going to click restraint. That was another one. There's a lot of research on teaching people just general click restraint, like just stop clicking and engaging, let it just be and take some time
Mm-hmm.
to process. That's again, this is a societal issue. Like I feel like a lot of, I don't know, going back to our work that we're doing in the field, but I find that younger children, most of the issues, like if you go into a preschool or like a primary grade, what is the function right now that you're seeing is driving a lot of behavior?
A lot of tangible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
find that that's more, because again, I've been in this field almost like 30 years now. But like I find more and more, and I feel that is really connected to the whole world is very immediate right now. We
Mm-hmm.
have kids these days have immediate access mostly to like technology. I mean, and again, technology was different when my son was little, but my ex and I, we were like, we're not going to have the car with the video in the back. We're not going to go to
Yeah.
restaurants, and we're not going to restaurants and giving him a phone or an iPad. He's going to have to be bored, and he's going to have to know that,
Mm-hmm.
we're not, but I go to like, and again, no judgment because everybody's living their lives, but it is contributing, I think, to a larger problem. Like I'll go to supermarkets and kids are in the supermarket, babies holding a device.
Yes. I've seen in like still in the stroller, which like again, I agree with you, is like we're asking people to have an individual impulse control when it's so widely pushed and available but then we're putting the individual, it's a collective option that we're putting back on the individual
Yes.
to change their behavior. And I think like as a parent, when you're like, this is just the it's so low effort and it's so high reward because now I can go to the grocery store and you're not driving me nuts.
Right. But at the same time, right? Like you think about all the things, like I remember my son as a baby in the supermarket. What's that? What's that? What's that? So now, like, like just the connection and the communication. And also,
Mm-hmm.
you know what? You can cry all you want. You're not getting that cookie. And I'm a different kind of person. I mean, like, I'm like, again, I don't know if it's a New York thing or if it's just my personality, but I'm like, if somebody were to judge me because my son's crying, I wish you would come over. Let's have a conversation. I've
Yeah.
told people who've given me advice about my child having a tantrum. I would tell them literally, listen, I don't need you right now. Do you want to come over at 2 a.m. when he's not sleeping? That's when I need you. I don't need you right now. I got this. I can handle this tantrum.
Right.
But if you have advice for me, come over at 2 a.m. and help me get this kid to sleep. Like, how about that? And then they walk away because they're like, this lady's crazy. But like, like I feel, everything is learning, right? So if they're tantruming, they're screaming, they're crying, but I think right now, there's a low response to just let me just get through the supermarket and keep this kid busy and engaged and not,
Mm-hmm.
meddling with whatever I need to do. Same thing in the car. I mean, like I just dealt with, again, not to say I'm this wonderful parent, but like I just was like, I'm not gonna throw something in front of my son's face to get him to be quiet right now. He, because it's also like if you look at like I don't know if you guys have done stuff on ACT, like an acceptance and commitment therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
that's all it does is teaching people to be cope and deal with uncomfortable situations and knowing you're going to be fine with it, you're going to get through it, and like we have to teach kids that at very young ages. And I think because there's so much immediacy right now. Everything is available, like, to kids immediately. They go to school, and that's the opposite. Like, nothing you like is available right now. You have to
Right,
sit, you
right.
have to learn, you have to attend. That's where I think a lot of behaviors are coming from as well. I see this in, like, with, like, typical children in preschools and primary grades too. Like, it's a time where, like, anything you want to watch. Like, even when my son was little, he was into certain shows that we were still watching, like, regular TV. So, like, he had to wait next Tuesday for that show to be on. Now you stream, you could find it, you search, everything is so available. And so, our tolerance of delaying anything is getting lower and lower. And that goes back into how we interact on the internet and social media. Everything is immediate. I don't want to wait. I want to be upset now about this situation. I want to react now. I'm not waiting 3 days. 3 days. That's
Yeah.
like, I'm not waiting 3 minutes. That's how people
Yeah.
seem to be engaging on social media and the internet. So there's a lot to it.
Yeah, I had a boss who this was more work based, but she was like I think probably one of the best pieces of advice where you get an email. Let's say you get an email from a parent who comes at you, like a staff member forgot to send home the kid's water bottle, and the parent comes at you for it. Let's say
Right.
she would say, open up a new email, write your first reaction, how you're feeling, how you would want to respond, save the draft, and come back to it 24 hours later. Save draft.
Yes.
And I feel like that, and she actually had another good piece of advice too that I'll share. I feel like that helps so much of, like, get out your feeling somewhere safe that doesn't cause a problem. Like, don't go fly off an email right to that parent, but put it out there, how you're really feeling, and then come back to it 24 hours later and see if you still feel that way, and then how you're going to actually respond to it. And then she also would say, like, when you get an email from an irate parent or something like that, or a parent that maybe you don't get along with, or a staff member that you don't get along with, picture how that information would come from somebody that you do like, or somebody that you do trust. So when you're seeing this, like, misinformation, or you're seeing something that makes you feel angry or reactive, or you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this person posted this thing again, think about how you would respond when it came from a different source, and it kind of, like, takes the heat out of it. Even if you're like, well, that's still garbage,
Right.
it takes the heat out of it, where you're not as, like, angry at that person, or like, oh, he's doing it again, look at him posting this again. And I feel like those two things have really settled my anger in those moments, or
Yeah.
just like allowed me to take the stop piece. Like, those have given me access to the stop part of that impulse control when
Yes.
interacting with others, especially in a space where, like, it's online and it's typed, where, like, I actually don't have to respond immediately. There's
Right.
no need for me to interact with this immediately.
I once saw this meme and I love it. It's like, you don't have to RSVP to every argument you're invited to.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
love that. The thing is, and those are all great strategies. The thing that we have to remember is that social media, though, like, designed for immediacy. Right. Like, because, even, like, sometimes, like, it's something ridiculous. You're in the middle of watching, like, some funny video, and then, like, it disappears, right? Because, like, the scroll kind of, repopulates,
Yeah.
whatever. So sometimes people get this, like, I need to respond now because I might not come across this post again.
True.
So there is, like, you can't, so, like, an email, right? You could save the draft. Somebody is arguing on the internet, right? And people, for some reason, and again, we are all like, I need to, like, I love a good meme, but
Mhm.
I once saw one, like, honey, are you coming to sleep? Not yet. Somebody's wrong on the internet, like, somebody's, like, typing away. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like, they need to fix this argument. They need to be right. And so it's immediate. They need to respond immediately because it's your opportunity is going to go away, supposedly. And that's and that's, again, by design. That's by design. Social media is developed to keep people engaged and
Mhm.
not save a draft, not walk away, not take a breath, but, like, to continuously stay on and stay engaged.
So if you're watching this, please like, share, and
Subscribe.
comment, engage.
But yeah, that's why being mindful about what you're engaging with, because if you start to try to skew your algorithm in different ways, then it's low stakes, or it's not such a big deal to be engaged in like puppy content. How much arguments can you get with puppies? You know,
Right. That's so true.
Cute things.
That's true. You can't argue with a puppy. They're too adorable. We do need to wrap up.
Yes.
This has been so interesting. Is there a way people can find you or contact you if they want to learn more about what you do or want to work with you or get your trainings?
Sure. Well, I just did a CEU that should be coming out on Study Notes, ABA.
Cool.
Which I'm excited about.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's coming out. I'm hoping to make a few more. That's very time consuming. So I'm trying to get
Yes.
into that. Right now, I mean, just if you can find me on LinkedIn, I check that. That's the best way to get me. So I'm at Liza Bergman, Bergman, Geonie. And you can find me on there. I'm always, happy to have a conversation, work on a project, help you, link you to some resources. I think I have every article written on it, every book written on. I'm trying to downsize my life a little bit. I'm like, I have books everywhere right now. I have my upstairs
my life
books
too.
and my downstairs books.
Yeah.
I have my dining room table books. It's bad. It's everywhere I go, there's a book in my bag. So, but yeah, I'm always happy to talk about it. I'm going to be presenting. I presented at ABA International in Portugal.
Wow, amazing.
In November, and that was a lot of fun. And I'm going to be presenting at APBA, the Association of Professional Behavior Analysts in New Orleans.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get out there. My biggest focus right now is just getting people involved in the conversation, just getting them seeing, especially for behavior analysts, I'm trying to get them to see how important this is and how socially valid this is. These are behaviors that are observable, measurable. We could work together on some type of ways of putting not a direct intervention, but some intervention tools out there, hopefully. I would love to talk more about it with people who want to talk about it. So.
Yeah, I think it's a great avenue for people. I think Christina, the statistic, it's like 80% of behavior analysts are in autism. And I work primarily in ADHD, and we really want to see people expanding their scope outside of autism, because there's so many spaces where behavior analysts can have such a socially valid impact. So if anybody's interested in exploring misinformation, social media, news information, how we are as consumers, you should reach out to Liza.
Reach out to me.
Yes. And that's it for today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.